The Galactic Council's war chamber hummed with tension as representatives from 47 worlds gathered around the massive holographic display. Admiral Keth of the Varian Fleet stood at attention, his scaled fingers drumming against the metal podium as he watched the tactical readouts scroll past in crimson streams. "The human vessels have breached the neutral zone," announced Council Leader Moore, her voice echoing through the crystalline chamber. 300 ships advancing toward the Kepler system. Their intentions are clear. A murmur of unease rippled through the assembled delegates. The humans had been quiet for too long, 53 cycles since their last diplomatic contact. Now they emerged from the void with a fleet that dwarfed anything seen in recent memory. "Estimated time to intercept?" asked General Vex, his four arms crossed in military precision. 18 hours at current velocity, Admiral Keth replied, his voice betraying no emotion despite the gravity of the situation. "Our combined fleets are already moving to defensive positions." The hologram shifted, displaying the vast expanse of space where two great armadas would soon meet. Red dots representing the allied forces of the Council, blue markers for the mysterious human fleet. Between them, the contested Kepler system hung like a jewel in the darkness, its 3 habitable worlds, rich with resources both sides desperately needed. Commander Nix of the Taloran Space Command stepped forward, her bioluminescent patches flickering with agitation. "The humans have ignored 17 attempts at communication. They respond to nothing, not even our universal peace frequencies." "Perhaps they cannot hear us," suggested Diplomat Wren, though his tone suggested he didn't believe his own words. "They hear us," Admiral Keth said grimly. "Human technology may be primitive by our standards, but their communications are functioning. They choose silence." The truth hung heavy in the chamber. Humanity had earned a reputation across the galaxy as unpredictable, dangerous, and utterly alien in their thinking. Other species had tried to understand them, their bizarre customs, their inexplicable emotions, their tendency to fight when logic demanded surrender, and to show mercy when victory was assured. What do we know of their battle capabilities? Council Leader Moore asked. General Vex consulted his datapad. "Limited. Their ships are crude but heavily armed. They favor close-range combat and unusual tactics. The Zephyrian encounter 3 cycles ago suggested they view warfare as more than simple resource acquisition." "Art," whispered Commander Nix, her patches now pulsing a nervous blue. "They treat it like art." The chamber fell silent. Every species present had their own philosophy of war efficiency, honor, necessity, but none had ever encountered beings who approached conflict with the same mindset they might bring to sculpture or music. "Recommendations?" Council Leader Moore's voice cut through the quiet. "Full mobilization," Admiral Keth responded without hesitation. "We match their numbers, establish superiority, and force a negotiation." The vote was swift and unanimous. Across 47 worlds, the call went out. Within hours, the largest military force in galactic history would assemble to face 300 human ships. But as the delegates filed out, preparing for what many believed would be the defining battle of their era, none could shake the feeling that they were missing something crucial about their enigmatic opponents. The humans had remained silent for 53 cycles, building, planning, waiting. Now they emerged from the darkness with purpose none could fathom. In 18 hours, 2 civilizations would meet in the void between worlds, and the galaxy would discover what humanity had been preparing for in their long silence. Every great bond starts with a single moment of courage. HFY Chronicle Stories is just beginning, and your support matters. If you love emotional sci-fi tales, forbidden connections, and stories that stay with you, hit subscribe. It's free, and it helps us bring more stories from the stars to you. War machine of the galaxy began to turn, massive and inexorable, while somewhere in the darkness, 300 human ships continued their steady advance toward destiny. Captain Ana Torres stood on the bridge of the flagship Resilience, watching the tactical display with calm determination. Around her, the crew moved with practiced efficiency, their voices low and steady despite the magnitude of what lay ahead. The human fleet had maintained perfect formation for the past 12 hours, each ship exactly where it needed to be. Signal. From the Defiance, reported Communications Officer Blake. Captain Ross confirms all ships are ready for the next phase. Acknowledged, Ana replied, her eyes never leaving the display showing the massive alien armada arrayed before them. Over 15,000 ships, the largest force ever assembled by the Galactic Council. It should have been terrifying. Instead, she felt only a deep sense of purpose. They're still trying to communicate with us, Blake continued. Same frequencies, same languages. The translation matrix identifies 68 different attempts in the past hour. Maintain communication silence, Ana ordered. They'll understand soon enough. Lieutenant Mack, the youngest officer on the bridge, shifted nervously at his station. Captain, those numbers ... Are we really going to engage 15,000 ships with 300? Ana turned to face him, her expression gentle but unwavering. Mac, do you know why humans first went into space? The young man blinked, clearly not expecting a history lesson in the face of overwhelming odds. To ... explore? Find new worlds? That was part of it, Ana agreed. But the real reason was simpler. We looked up at those stars and realized we were alone. Every other species we've encountered evolved in clusters dozens, sometimes hundreds of intelligent races sharing the same galactic arm. They grew up knowing they weren't unique. She gestured toward the view screen where distant points of light marked the approaching alien fleet. But humans? We spent millennia believing we were the only thinking beings in the universe. We learned to dream alone, to hope alone, to fight alone. That changes you in ways these species can't comprehend. Chief Engineer Park looked up from her station. The power cores are holding steady at 98% efficiency. All systems green across the fleet. Thank you, Park. Ana moved to the center of the bridge, her hands clasped behind her back. They think this is about the Kepler system, about resources and territory. They're mobilizing their entire civilization because they believe we're here to take something from them. Aren't we? Mac asked quietly. Ana smiled, not the cold expression of a warrior, but something warmer, more complex. Mac, in the past 53 cycles, how many wars has the Galactic Council fought? The lieutenant consulted his datapad. 17 major conflicts, 42 border disputes, and countless smaller engagements. And how many has humanity fought? None, Captain. We've been ... quiet. Not quiet, Ana corrected. Watching, learning. Do you know what we discovered? During those 53 cycles of observation, the bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of instruments. Even the crew members at distant stations seemed to lean in, sensing something significant in their captain's words. We discovered that every species in this galaxy treats war like mathematics, Ana continued. Calculate strength, assess resources, minimize losses, maximize gains. It's logical, efficient, predictable. She walked to the view screen, placing her palm against the transparent barrier between her and the void. But humans learned warfare alone, remember? We didn't have other species to teach us their logical approaches. Instead, we learned something else entirely. What's that, Captain? Blake asked, his voice barely above a whisper. We learned that sometimes the most important victories aren't won through fighting. Ana turned back to face her crew, and in that moment, every person on the bridge understood that their captain wasn't just a military commander. She was something the galaxy had never seen before. Signal all ships, Ana ordered, her voice carrying new authority. Begin Phase 2. Across the human fleet, 300 ships began a maneuver that would change the course of galactic history. Not an attack formation, not a defensive stance, but something else, entirely something, that would teach the watching universe a lesson about the species that had learned to dream alone among the stars. The aliens. Sensors registered the change. Immediately, and in the Council's war chamber, alarms began to sound as their tactical computers struggled to interpret what the human fleet was doing. It was. They would soon realize something no military computer could possibly predict. In the Council war chamber, chaos erupted as the human fleet's impossible maneuver registered on every sensor array simultaneously. Admiral Keth stared at the holographic display, his scaled fingers trembling as he tried to process what he was witnessing. "This cannot be accurate," General Vex muttered, his forearms gesticulating wildly at the readings. "Check all sensors. Run full diagnostics." "Sensors confirmed accurate, sir," replied the technician, her voice barely steady. "The human ships are. They're not moving into any known formation." Commander Nix stepped closer to the display, her bioluminescent patches flickering rapidly through the full spectrum of visible light, a sign of extreme agitation among her species. "They're arranging themselves in dot patterns, geometric shapes." "Battle formations?" asked Council Leader Moore, though her tone suggested she already knew better. "No," Admiral Keth whispered, the word carrying the weight of dawning realization. "They're creating symbols." The 300 human ships had spread across a vast section of space, each vessel positioning itself with mathematical precision. As the Council watched in stunned silence, the pattern became unmistakably clear. The ships were forming letters, human letters, arranged in perfect lines across the cosmic void. "What does it say?" Moore demanded. The translation came through moments later, and the chamber fell into absolute silence as the words appeared on secondary displays. Throughout the room, "We come in peace, we offer friendship." General Vex was the first to break the silence. "A trap. It has to be a trap." But Admiral Keth was studying the formation more carefully, his tactical mind working through possibilities and implications. "The positioning," he said slowly. "To create letters readable from our position, each ship had to calculate not just their own placement, but the perspective from our fleet. They had to know exactly where we would be, how we would approach, which means," Commander Nix asked, though her patches had begun to shift to a softer, more curious blue, "which means they've been tracking us for hours, maybe days. They knew our numbers, our formation, our approach vector." Admiral Keth's voice carried growing amazement. "They could have positioned themselves for a devastating first strike. Instead, they chose to spell words." On the bridge of the Resilience, Captain Aina watched the readings from the alien fleet with satisfaction. The massive armada had stopped its advance, 15,000 ships hanging motionless in space as their commanders struggled to comprehend the human message. "Phase 3, Captain," asked Communications Officer Blake. "Not yet," Aina replied. "Give them time to process. This is probably the first time in their history that an opposing fleet has done something completely outside their tactical understanding." "Lieutenant." Mac looked up from his station, wonder replacing the fear that had marked his expression earlier. "Captain, how did we know they would stop?" Aina moved to the central command chair, settling into it with the ease of someone completely at peace. "With her choices." "Because, Mac, every intelligent species shares certain traits. Curiosity is one of them. When faced with something they've never encountered before, they have to understand it before they can react to it." "But what if they had fired first?" Chief Engineer Park asked. "Then we would have fought," Aina replied simply. "But humans learned long ago that there's always a moment a single heartbeat where you can choose violence or something else. We gambled that these species, for all their military might, had never learned to recognize that moment." The communications console chirped softly. Blake's eyes widened as he read the incoming transmission. "Captain, we're receiving signals from the alien fleet. Multiple frequencies, multiple languages. They're asking who we are. Aina smiled. Open a channel, Blake. All frequencies, universal peace signal protocols. She stood, smoothing her uniform, and faced the main screen as it activated. Within moments, the bridge filled with overlapping voices, dozens of alien languages being translated simultaneously into human speech. This is Captain Aina Torres of the Earth vessel Resilience, she said, her voice carrying clearly across the void between fleets. We represent humanity, and we come not as conquerors, but as neighbors who have been watching from afar for too long. The cacophony of alien voices fell silent. In the council war chamber, every representative leaned forward, hanging on her words. You have been at war for 53 cycles, Aina continued. 17 major conflicts, 42 border disputes, countless smaller battles. You fight for resources, for territory, for honor. But you fight alone, each species against the others, trusting no one completely. She paused, letting the truth of her words settle across 15,000 ships. Humans learned something different. In our long isolation, we learned that the greatest strength doesn't come from standing alone. It comes from choosing to stand together. The message that would reshape galactic civilization was just beginning. The translation systems aboard 15,000 ships worked frantically as Captain Aina's words spread through the alien fleet. In the council war chamber, Admiral Keth found himself leaning forward despite every tactical instinct, screaming that this was some elaborate deception. You speak of standing together. Council Leader Moore's voice carried clearly through the communications array, yet you arrive with 300 warships. How do we interpret this contradiction? Aina's image appeared on screens throughout the council chamber, a human face that conveyed emotions the assembled species were still learning to read. We brought ships because we know you understand strength. But observe what we do with that strength. On the tactical displays, the human fleet began moving again. But instead of forming battle lines or defensive positions, the ships spread even further apart, each vessel taking position around the perimeter of the vast space where both fleets had gathered. They're surrounding us, General Vex observed, his 4 arms moving to his weapon controls. No, Admiral Keth said quietly, realization dawning. They're forming a circle, with our fleet at the center. Commander Nix's bioluminescent patches flickered to deep purple, a color that indicated profound contemplation among her people. A protective formation. They're shielding us? Aina's voice continued, calm and steady. For 53 cycles, we watched your conflicts and learned your patterns. Every war begins the same way, with fear. Fear of the other, fear of loss, fear of being vulnerable. But what if, instead of meeting that fear with violence, we met it with trust? Lieutenant. Mac looked up at his captain with something approaching awe. This was the plan all along, wasn't it? Not just the formation, but the whole approach. Aina nodded without taking her eyes from the main screen. Humans spent millennia perfecting the art of war. We became very good at killing each other. But eventually, we realized that our greatest achievement wasn't learning how to fight, it was learning when not to. Communications Officer Blake monitored the flood of transmissions coming from the alien fleet. Captain, I'm reading increased chatter across all their channels. Multiple species are trying to communicate with each other directly, not just through council channels. That's expected, Aina replied. They're trying to coordinate a response to something they've never encountered before. But watch what happens. Next. On the bridge of the Varian flagship, Admiral Keth stared at the tactical display, showing his fleet completely encircled by human ships that were pointed outward, away from the Council forces, as if protecting them from some external threat. Admiral, his communications officer reported, we're receiving individual transmissions from several human vessels. They're sharing technical specifications. Weapons data? Keth asked sharply. No, sir. Defensive systems. Shield. configurations, evasive maneuvers, damage control procedures. They're teaching us how to protect ourselves. General Vex's voice cut through the command channel. This has to be a trap. No species shares military secrets with potential enemies. But Commander Nix's response carried a note of wonder that surprised everyone, including herself. What if? We're not enemies. What if we never were? Back on the Resilience, Anna addressed the alien fleet once more. You asked why we came with warships. We came prepared for war because we respected your strength. But we came hoping for something better. Every great civilization reaches a moment where it must choose between conquest and cooperation. She gestured toward the viewscreen, where the lights of thousands of ships created a constellation in the darkness. The Kepler system has resources enough for all our peoples. The galaxy is vast enough for all our dreams. The only thing that has ever been scarce is trust. Chief Engineer Park looked up from her station, her voice soft with emotion. Captain, I'm reading power fluctuations across the alien fleet. They're powering down weapon systems. Aina closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of history shifting around them. Blake, prepare to transmit the package. The package. Captain? Mac asked. Everything, Aina replied. 53 cycles of observation. Every conflict we witnessed, every pattern we identified, every solution we developed. We're giving them the complete analysis of their own wars and the blueprints for ending them. The data package that humanity transmitted in the next few moments contained more than military intelligence. It held something far more precious, the accumulated wisdom of a species that had learned to see beyond the immediate needs of survival, to recognize the deeper patterns that connected all thinking beings. As the alien fleets received and processed the information, a new understanding began to dawn across 47 worlds. The humans hadn't come to conquer or demand tribute. They had come to offer something that no species in galactic history had ever given freely to another. They had come to offer hope. 3 months after the encounter that historians would later call the Convergence, Captain Aina Torres stood in the newly constructed station orbiting the first planet of the Kepler system. Through the massive observation deck windows, she could see construction vessels from 48 different worlds working together to build something unprecedented in galactic history. The joint mining operation is ahead of schedule, reported Director Kim, a human engineer who had been appointed to coordinate the multi-species effort. The Varian crystal cutting techniques combined with Taloran biofiltration systems are producing yields 300% higher than any single species operation could achieve. Aina nodded, but her attention was focused on something far more significant than resource extraction. In the space around the station, ships from dozens of worlds moved in coordinated patterns that would have been impossible just months earlier. They had learned to work together, to trust each other's capabilities, to see strength in diversity rather than threat. Admiral Keth approached from across the observation deck, his scaled features showing an expression that Aina had learned to recognize as contentment. Captain Torres, the Council has reached a unanimous decision regarding the proposal. The Galactic Peace Initiative. Approved in full, Keth confirmed. All 47 member worlds have agreed to the framework. The standing military forces will be reduced by 60% over the next cycle, with the remaining ships reorganized into joint exploration and protection fleets. Aina felt a deep satisfaction that had nothing to do with victory in the traditional sense. And the exploration missions? 12 joint expeditions are already being planned, Keth replied. Each one will include representatives from multiple species, including human crews. We have much to learn from each other. Through the windows, they watched as a Varian transport docked with a human cargo vessel, their crews working together to transfer supplies to the growing colony on the planet below. The sight had become commonplace, but Aina never tired of witnessing what had once seemed impossible. Commander Nix joined them at the observation windows, her bioluminescent patches glowing with soft golden light, a color Aina had learned indicated deep contentment among her people. The cultural exchange programs are exceeding all expectations, she reported. We have human artists working with Zephyrian composers, Taloran philosophers studying human literature, and Varian engineers fascinated by human improvisation techniques. What about the resistance movements? Aina asked. She knew that not every member of the various species had embraced the new era of cooperation. Diminishing, Admiral Keth replied. It's difficult to maintain fear of the unknown when the unknown is helping you build hospitals and schools. Lieutenant Mack, now promoted to full lieutenant and serving as Aina's aide, approached with a datapad. Captain, we're receiving requests from 17 non-council species for information about the peace initiative. Word is spreading beyond our immediate neighbors. Aina took the pad and scanned the requests. Species she had never heard of, from distant spiral arms, all asking the same basic question: how do you choose trust over fear? It's working, she said quietly, more to herself than to the others. Did you ever doubt it would? Commander Nix asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. Aina considered the question carefully. There were moments, especially in those first few minutes, when your fleets could have opened fire regardless of our message. But humans learned something important. During our long isolation, sometimes the greatest risks produce the greatest rewards. She gestured toward the bustling activity outside the station. Look at what we've accomplished in just 3 months. Joint colonies, shared technology, combined exploration missions. We've achieved more cooperation than this galaxy has seen in centuries, all because we chose to meet strength with trust instead of strength with strength. Admiral Keth's communication device chimed softly. He listened for a moment, then looked up with an expression Aina had never seen from him before, something that might have been joy. Captain Torres, he said formally, the Council has voted to establish a permanent position, Galactic Coordinator for Peace Initiatives. They have unanimously nominated you for the role. Aina looked out at the ships and stations, at the crews working together, at the future they were all building one choice at a time. I'm honored by the nomination, she said finally. But I have a condition. Name it, Keth replied immediately. The position rotates every 2 cycles among all member species. Peace isn't something one people can impose on others. It's something we all have to choose, again and again. As the sun set on the first planet of the Kepler system, it illuminated not just human and alien ships, but something far more precious, the proof that when beings choose courage over fear, trust over suspicion, and hope over despair, they can build something greater than any of them could achieve alone. The human flag had been raised not in conquest, but in invitation, and the galaxy had responded not with war, but with the courage to imagine a better future. In the end, the greatest victory belonged not to any single species, but to the simple, revolutionary idea that they could all win together.